Hello and welcome to Tales from South Florida. I am, as the song just said, your rockin' DJ, Bill Monty. Yeah, rockin' DJ, because on this episode we're going to be talking about the great musical acts that got their start down here in South Florida. I'm sure some of you know some of these acts because they've made it big time during our lifetime. But these are people that became number one in the country and the world, and it covers decades and generations. The first one that I found out about, I didn't know this, so I was familiar with their music because of a movie that came out in 1979. But it turns out they were making music in South Florida a long time before that. And I'm talking about the great soul R&B duo Sam and Dave. Sam and Dave met working the gospel music circuit, and later they worked in small clubs in Miami. They sang together in the King of Hearts Club. I remember hearing about that from folks. When we moved here in the mid-'60s, I still think I remember seeing ads in the paper or hearing people talk about the King of Hearts Club. They developed a live act, mostly gospel-inspired. Yet one day, record producer Steve Alamo discovered them while they were performing at that same King of Hearts nightclub that I was just talking about. Signed them to a deal with, get this, Marlin Records. It seems like the name Marlin just keeps popping up in South Florida, doesn't it? Don't we have a baseball team with that name? They had 2 singles in early 1962 on that Marlin label. Didn't really get anywhere with it, didn't become big hits, but did help get them signed on to Roulette Records in New York City. They did have 2 more re-releases on Marlin Records, again, not really making the big splash they wanted it to. Their music, if you haven't heard Sam and Dave, you've probably heard Sam Cooke, I would imagine, maybe Jackie Wilson. Their music was very similar to those artists, but they had a harder, to me, a more hard-driving sound. I'm more reminded of James Brown, without kind of all the shouting and stuff when I hear. They were so musical. They were a little rougher than the Temptations also. In the summer of 1964, the owner of Marlin Records introduced them to Jerry Wexler at Atlantic Records. He then asked Stax Records, which was a big record company out of Memphis, to start recording them. And that's when they started moving up the musical charts. They initially recorded with the Stax house band, Booker T and the MGs. Can you imagine? The house band is Booker T and the MGs. And this is the same label that had recordings by Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, Carla Thomas, other soul artists of the time. The first big hit, You Don't Know Like I Know, hit number 7 on the R&B charts in 1966. And that was the first of 10 consecutive top 20 R&B hits over 3 years. In 1966, they also released Hold On, I'm Coming, which was an enormous hit for Sam and Dave, and it was their first single to break into the top 40 pop charts. It was named the number 1 song of the year for 1966 by Billboard R&B charts, and it spent 20 weeks on those charts, finally peaking at number 1 in June of 1966. In 1988, Rolling Stone named it as one of the best 100 songs of the past 25 years. Of course, the biggest hit for Sam and Dave was a song called Soul Man. It was released in August of 1967, and it just dominated the music charts at that time. In a time when rock and roll and the Woodstock era was all starting to really hit, this was a crossover tune. It was just a great, great song. But Sam and Dave themselves were starting to come apart at the seams. By 1970, the duo had broken up to pursue solo careers, neither of which took off. And by 1972, they were back again, but without a record label and touring places like Turkey, where they were quite a large act. They really had vanished, though, from the public eye until 1979, when the Blues Brothers made the scene on Saturday Night Live. Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi brought the music of R&B of the 60s back to life with a comedy duo, Jake and Elwood Blues, who performed and just generally got into trouble. It became a big hit movie, and Soul Man became a big hit song for the Blues Brothers and reignited that interest in Sam and Dave. Sam and Dave continued to perform for years after that, They did appear on Saturday Night Live, although they initially did refuse to perform with the Blues Brothers, believe it or not, because John Belushi supposedly told them they could open for them with Soul Man, but then the Blues Brothers would take over. They did perform in Paul Simon's film One Trick Pony, a film I still remember, not as being a great film, but it was an interesting concept film anyway. But they last performed on New Year's Eve, 1981, at the Old Waldorf in San Francisco. When they walked off the stage, it was the last time that they ever spoke to each other. Dave Prater died in a car crash in Sycamore, Georgia on April 9th, 1988, while driving to his mother's house. And Sam Moore just recently passed away on January 10th, 2025. Two Miami natives who made it big. But while they did make it big, there was someone else who decided to make even a bigger splash in the 70s and become the local king of disco, and then the worldwide king of disco. There was a gentleman, his name was Harry Wayne Casey, and he formed a band called the Sunshine Band because they lived in Florida, which is a sunshine state. The band was founded in 1973 down in Hialeah, and they became one of the biggest sounds of the 70s and of the disco era as KC and the Sunshine Band, with hits that included Get Down Tonight, That's the Way I Like It, Shake, Shake, Shake Your Booty, I'm Your Boogie Man, Keep It Lovin', Boogie Shoes. The list goes on and on. These guys had number one hits all over the place. They were as big as they could possibly be. When you went to a disco club, you were going to hear KC and the Sunshine Band all night long. When the band got together, Harry Wayne Casey was a record store employee and a part-timer at a place called TK Records, no longer in business, in Hialeah. He originally called the band KC and the Sunshine Junkanoo Band. Obviously, KC decided on a better name and came down with KC and the Sunshine Band, and with the release of their self-titled second album in 1975, they spawned the group's first major hit with Get Down Tonight. And from then on, the sky was the limit. By the 1980s, the disco craze was starting to end, and so was the success for KC and the Sunshine Band. Although still in demand at local clubs or clubs across the world, they were no longer getting the hit records that they used to have. There was a brief revival of interest in disco music in 1991 that brought Casey out of retirement. He brought the band back together with some new members and two original members, and they began touring again. They released an album, Oh Yeah, in 1993. That was after a 10-year gap between albums. Just as everyone has a musical made of their music these days, it seems, there's a musical of KC and the Sunshine Band. It opened July 1st of 2024. It's called Who Do You Love? And it premiered in Edinburgh in Scotland at a festival there. A reworked version of that musical is scheduled to transfer to Charing Cross Theatre in London's West End in September of 2025 under the name Get Down Tonight. I hope that works. From everything I've heard, Harry Casey is supposed to be a really nice guy. Good luck to you, Casey, with the musical. There's no way you could talk about the great talent that came out of South Florida without talking about the queen of South Florida music. I remember in the 1970s, you'd hear about at the county fairs or local fairs that you could go see the Miami Sound Machine. They were a mix of Cuban, jazz, fusion, a little bit of rock, a little bit of just get up and dance music. And they had this lead singer. She was something special, and her name was Gloria Estefan. Gloria Estefan was born in Cuba the same year as yours truly was. In 1959, she and her family, though, immigrated to Miami as a result of the Cuban Revolution. Cuba's loss was Miami's gain. She attended the University of Miami. She graduated with a BA in psychology, a minor in French. She worked as an English and Spanish and French translator at Miami International Airport's Customs Department. And she was once approached, supposedly, by the CIA to become a possible employee. I guess they were going to open up a musical department. But lucky for us, in 1975, Gloria Estefan and her cousin met Emilio Estefan Jr. while performing at a church ensemble rehearsal. Emilio had formed a band, and he thought she might be a great addition to it. In 1977, the Miami Sound Machine began recording and releasing albums and 45s on the Audiophon Records label in Miami. In 1978, Gloria married Emilio Estefan Jr. after 2 years of dating, and their popularity at that point was just growing. In 1984, Miami Sound Machine released their first epic Columbia album, Eyes of Innocence, which included the dance hit Dr. Beat and the ballad I Need Your Love. The second album, 1987's Let It Loose, went multi-platinum, with 3 million copies sold in the U.S. alone. It featured the hits Anything for You, 1, 2, 3, Rhythm Is Gonna Get You, Bet You Say That, and Can't Stay Away From You. That was the year also that Gloria Estefan took top billing, and the band's name changed to Gloria Estefan and the Miami Sound Machine. From that point on, there was absolutely nothing that could stop Gloria Estefan and the Miami Sound Machine. They are well loved here in South Florida. They do some great things locally. They support the community. They've opened restaurants. They have done just so much. She and her husband, Emilio, they're really, sometimes I think, the heartbeat of Miami and Miami-Dade County with everything that they have done for us down here. If you remember 1991, Gloria Estefan was seriously injured in a crash of her touring bus in Pennsylvania. She recovered from that. It was a long recovery, but she has come through. And just like KC and the Sunshine Band are looking for a hit musical for themselves in September of 2025 on the West End, Gloria Estefan made it to Broadway with a musical about her life and that of her husband. On Your Feet opened on Broadway November 5th of 2015. Played for, I don't remember, it was up for a couple of years, I think, and is still being performed across the country. I think one of the local theater companies, Actors Playhouse, I believe, did a version of it last year. Her music is still out there. She's still recording. As recently as 2022, she released a Christmas album with her family. The woman just keeps on going. She's got all the energy I wish I had. And hey, there are a lot of other people that came from South Florida. Right now we have the wonderful Pitbull, Mr. 305. I didn't even have time to talk about him. But he's someone else. See, in Miami and in South Florida, we just keep producing great talent. Sam and Dave, KC and the Sunshine Band, Gloria Estefan and the Miami Sound Machine, and hey, even Bill Monty's Tales from South Florida. Everyone else is singing, maybe I'll sing my own praises. Hey, if you enjoyed this or any other episode, I hope that you will hit that subscribe button. Sure helps us to keep the show going. I do appreciate it. And if you could just hit that like or thumbs up if you're on YouTube with this, and you could make a comment and you could share with your family and friends, I would sure appreciate it. Hey, one final note. Bill Monty's Tales from South Florida is out there doing meals from South Florida, and you can find us on YouTube. So we're visiting your favorite restaurants and giving short 3-minute reviews of whether or not you should go there. So head on over to YouTube and the Tales from South Florida YouTube channel. And you can catch some of our Meals from South Florida videos. Or just go to talesfromsouthflorida.com. That's the website that has everything Tales from South Florida, including a link to our YouTube channel. Plus, it has our Spotify music list. I don't think I have any Gloria Estefan music on there. I'm going to have to remedy that. Thank you so much for listening. I'm looking forward to speaking to you again real soon. Until then, I remind you, my friends, be safe and be kind. Now, where's that theme music?
Let's take a talk down memory lane, 'cause the stories around here are just insane. Pirates World, the Sporto and Wolfies too. Palm Beach to Key West, that's where we grew. These are the tales from South Florida for you. With your host, Bill Monty.